Welcome to Candy Dialog Engine. Candy Dialog Engine is perhaps the most powerful and the most extensive dialog system for Godot 4. Candy Dialog Engine provides all the basic features you might want from a dialog system. You've got dialog boxes, speech bubbles, subtitles. You can display portraits, you even have tools for controlling and animating background layers, visual novel character busts, and a lot more. Candy Dialog Engine's philosophy is that anything that relates to dialogue, anything that should be controlled through dialogue or should be synchronized with dialogue, should be a feature in a dialogue system. So as an example, Candy Dialog Engine provides a lot of commands to synchronize dialogue with various media, such as video, audio, or even images. You also have cutscene commands, which allow you to control the nodes in your game environment through dialogue. You can instantiate scenes, move and animate characters or sprites, change lights or the active camera, and much more, all through Candy Dialog Engine's cutscene commands. And it goes a lot further. You can run multiple dialogues at the same time, and that makes it very easy for things such as NPC barks, where NPCs might make comments in the background when the player is standing near them. And Candy Dialog Engine is a complete programming layer, and that means it can act as a ready-made modding support solution. In other words, if you add Candy Dialog Engine to your game could become instantly moddable, even if your game's dialogues do not actually use Candy Dialog Engine. Okay, so with all of this out of the way, we are now going to show you in this video how to download, set up, and use Candy Dialog Engine and the companion Candy Dialog Creator. One thing you need to understand is that Candy Dialog Engine comes in two parts. You have Candy Dialog Engine, which is the code and the Godot scenes and the assets that you put in your Godot project to run dialogues. And then you have Candy Dialog Creator, which is a standalone application, and you use it to create and edit dialogues. And it provides a useful interface for that purpose. It also has a lot of helpful features that make writing dialogues a lot easier and a lot faster. And it even synchronizes with your Godot project, so it can actually look at the assets you have in your project. And you're going to see what we mean, but imagine the Candy Dialog Creator being able to give you a list of all the character portraits in your project, so you don't have to type them, you can just select them, and you can even preview them when you select them to make sure you pick the right one. And the Candy Dialog Creator can export dialogues directly to your project. It even allows you to test dialogues in basically 2 or 3 clicks. Anytime you want to test your dialogue while you're working on it, it just takes a couple of seconds. So let's start by downloading Candy Dialog Engine and Candy Dialog Creator. To do this, you can go to our GitHub, and the links will be provided in this video's description. And here you have the Candy Dialog Engine GitHub, and you just need to go here to Releases, and here download the latest release. So scroll down. I recommend reading the information here. It can be important sometimes. And for Candy Dialog Engine, download the source code here. Next, go to the Candy Dialog Creator GitHub, and the link will also be provided in the video description. And go to Releases once again, and download the latest release. Again, make sure you read all the information. It can be important. But now here, for Candy Dialog Creator, you have several options. As I mentioned previously, Candy Dialog Creator is a standalone application. It's made in Godot, but it's compiled, and you can run it like a regular software on your computer. So that means you need to download the version that matches your operating system. If you're using Linux, download the Linux version. If you're using Apple or Mac, download the Mac OS version. And if you're using Windows, download the Windows version. Now, you can also download the source code. And this will give you the Candy Dialog Creator as a raw Godot project. So that means you will get the creator in a normal Godot project format, not compiled. And that's useful if you want to modify the Candy Dialog creator, or perhaps if you just want to look at the code and make sure there's nothing malicious inside of it. Yeah, you can just download the source code. And one thing I want to mention, I said earlier that Candy Dialog Engine requires purchasing a license or paying royalties for commercial use. That's only Candy Dialog Engine. Candy Dialog Creator is completely free. And in fact, Candy Dialog Creator is published under the MIT license, so it's completely open source. You can do whatever you want with it. You can modify it, you can redistribute it. That's entirely up to you. That's the MIT license. And once you've downloaded everything, we can continue and see how to set up and use Candy Dialog Engine and Candy Dialog Creator. Let's now see how to integrate Candy Dialog Engine inside a Godot project. So first, go back to the folder where you downloaded Candy Dialog Engine and Candy Dialog Creator and extract or unpack the two files, and you're going to get these two folders. Go to the Candy Dialog Engine folder, and here we want to select CandyDE, that's the CandyDE folder, the first install folder, and the CandyDE install.gd script. Copy all three of these and go to your Godot project's root folder. The root folder is the main folder of your Godot project. It contains this file here, project.godot. So if you see this file, you are in the correct folder. It also contains the icon, the .godot folder. So yeah, if you see that stuff, that's the folder you need. In your project's root folder, paste the two folders and the script. Now, all we need to do is go back to the Godot editor, which should be open to our project. And it's going to import the two folders and the file. Now, you can ignore these warnings. We're basically going to fix them right now. They're completely normal. So what you need to do right now is here in the File System tab, select the CandyDE install.gd script and right-click it and click Run. And it's doing a bunch of stuff. Now, one of the things it did, it merged the contents of the first install folder inside the CandyDE folder, and it deleted the empty first install folder. It did a few other things, but we're going to get to that in a second. What you need to do next, well, first you can delete the script. We don't need it anymore. Make sure after running the script that it said installation complete. That means it's finished. And now you can just right-click and delete. It did its job. Go to the project tab here at the top and go to Tools and Upgrade Project Files. It's going to ask if you want to restart an upgrade, so click it. It's going to ask if you want to save and reload. Click that as well. And it's going to upgrade the CandyDE files and give them brand new UIDs. Now, if you look at the output here, you're going to see a bunch of warnings about UIDs. You can ignore these warnings because we actually just fixed them. So why are the warnings showing up? Well, it's very simple. It printed the warnings only to fix the issue immediately after, and that's why you're seeing the warnings. But you can ignore them, they've been fixed. And let's now look at what the installation script did. As I mentioned earlier, it merged the first install folder into the CandyDE folder. It also did two more things. If you go up here to the Project tab and you click Project Settings, and you go here to the Globals tab, it added these two autoloads. And if you're a beginner in Godot, an autoload is a script or scene that is always present, always loaded, so you can access it at any time. We'll talk about these two things later in more detail. Now, let's go to the Input Map tab here. And this is the other thing that the installation script did. It added these 4 input actions. Now, you need to understand what these actions do. The most important one is dialogue advance. During dialogues, when a character speaks, their speech is going to be displayed on screen as text. And the dialogue is going to pause and wait for the player to press a key. And once the player presses that key, the dialogue will continue to the next line. And that's what dialogue advance is. It's the key that the player presses to continue to the next line. So you can add any key or button you want. For example, I'm going to add space. So in order to advance, the player will need to press space. Now, the 3 other input actions are optional: dialogue skip, dialogue speed, and dialogue slow. One thing you need to know to understand these actions is that Candy Dialog Engine offers a typewriter effect, and the typewriter effect is optional. If you don't know what a typewriter effect is, in a dialogue system, this is when a character's speech is not displayed instantly. Instead, it's being displayed one letter at a time, as if it's being written live. You can configure the typewriter speed, and the dialogue skip key is going to make the text display instantly. That's in case players don't want to wait for the text to finish writing. The dialogue speed key, on the other hand, it makes the typewriter write faster. And dialogue slow is going to make the typewriter write slower. Now, you can add any keys you want to those 3 options, and you don't have to add keys at all to those 3 because they're optional. And if you're not going to use them, you can even delete them if you want. But you can keep them, it doesn't hurt anything. Okay, something you should know. Those 3 keys need a different key from one another. They cannot have the same key because it's going to conflict. So here for dialogue slow, I'm gonna assign the left arrow button, and for dialogue speed, I'm gonna assign the right arrow button. And for dialogue skip, I'm going to assign the space bar again. And this is fine. Notice that dialogue advance also uses the space bar, but it's perfectly fine. When a character's speech is being written with the typewriter effect, if I press space, it's going to write the entire text instantly. And then I can press space again to continue to the next line. And I can do one more thing here. I can assign the right arrow and the left arrow. And this way, when a character's speech is being written by the typewriter effect, I can press the right arrow to speed it up or the left arrow to slow it down. And when it's finished writing, I can press the right arrow or the left arrow again to advance to the next line. So keep that in mind. You can assign to dialogue advance the same keys as those 3 options. And personally, I would recommend doing that. It's probably more convenient for the player. But again, it depends on your game. It depends on what kind of experience you want to offer. So that's up to you. Now, before we continue any further, there's one small but important thing I want to mention. Let's go back to the Candy Dialog Engine folder that we downloaded. And in that folder, we have the Documents folder. So let's take a look inside, and we have a bunch of documents in the folders. This is what we're interested in, the Guides folder. And if we look inside the Guides folder, this is what we find. There's a bunch of PDF files. And these files are the official documentation for Candy Dialog Engine. They tell you how to use it. Now, the files here in the guides folder are the basic documentation. They teach you the basics of Candy Dialog Engine, and a lot of that stuff is going to be explained in this video, but generally speaking, it's highly recommended that you read those, all of them here. And then you have the folders up here. The folders contain guides that relate to more specific features. And there's a lot of guides in those folders, but you don't need to read all of them. Let's take a look at the Spoken Lines folder, for example. So in here, you can see we have a guide on dispositions. We have a guide on the lexicon feature. There's also a guide on speech bubbles, on the typewriter effect that I mentioned earlier. So, you know, if you want to use the typewriter effect, you can read this guide and it's going to tell you how to configure it. And if you don't plan to use the typewriter effect, you don't need to read this. Same with all the others. Now, generally speaking, it might be a good idea to take a quick look at everything, so at least you know what Candy Dialog Engine can do. You never know what you might find useful that you didn't suspect was available. But you definitely don't need to read everything in detail. You really only need to read the things that you're going to use. Another quick mention, we have this folder here, UI customization. This will tell you how to customize the different parts of the dialog UI, and we're going to get back to that later. But just so you know, when you want to customize the UI, this is where you're going to find information about this. Okay, let's now take a look at the Candy DE folder because you will be using it often. As you can see here, there's 5 folders inside, and let's look at these folders here. It's going to be more convenient. So here I'm inside my Godot project root folder again, and I have the Candy DE folder here. If I open it, you can see the 5 subfolders. Let's start with the dialogues folder. The dialogues folder, that's where you will place your dialogues. As a reminder, you will create dialogues inside Candy Dialog Creator, and that's a standalone application. That means it's a separate software. So you will create dialogues in Candy Dialog Creator, and then you will export these dialogues as text files. And you will place those text files here in the dialogues folder so that Candy Dialog Engine can load and run them during the game. You can ignore this file here, git keep. This is just because Candy Dialog Engine is uploaded to GitHub, and empty folders don't get uploaded. So we just have to place this git keep file inside to ensure the dialogues folder gets uploaded, and this way you get the folder when you download Candy Dialog Engine. You can ignore this, you can even delete it, it's not important at all. Next, we have the scenes folder, and I'm skipping over media because I will talk about it later. So the scenes folder contains a lot of folders with various Godot scenes, and these scenes are all part of Candy Dialog Engine. Most of them, except for the testing scene, are related to the dialog user interface, the UI. We'll talk about all these scenes in detail later when we explain the UI and how to customize it. Next, we have the scripts folder, and as you can probably guess, it contains scripts for Candy Dialog Engine. You will be using some of these scripts when you customize the UI, and you might even be modifying some of them. Again, we will explain everything later. For now, just remember, the scripts folder contains all the scripts for Candy Dialog Engine. And then we have the UI resources folder. The UI resources folder contains textures for Candy Dialog Engine's default dialog UI. For example, here you have a texture for the default speech bubbles. As a reminder, the UI is 100% customizable. So if you want to customize the UI and you want to create your own textures for it, you can place these textures here inside this folder. And finally, we have the media folder. The media folder contains all kinds of media files that are related to dialogues. For example, that includes character portraits, voice files, music or sound effects that you might want to play during dialogues, background images, and so on. If we take a look inside, there's two folders here, characters and general. The characters folder is for media specific to characters, and the general folder, that's for general media such as music, background, and so on. If you look inside the characters folder, you will see that there's a bunch of subfolders. There's the busts folder, that's for visual novel character busts. There's the portrait folder for character portraits, sprites for 2D character sprites, and voices for voice files. Now, if you look in any of these folders, for example, the portraits folder, you will notice that there's several subfolders, one for each character. And basically, you place a character's portrait files inside that character's folder. So for example, if I open Alice's folder, you will notice it contains portraits for Alice. On a small note, these portraits here are provided with Candy Dialog Engine. We provide them so you can use them as placeholders or for testing purposes. We don't really expect you to use them during dialogues because they're not very good quality. Plus, I'm sure you want your game to have its own unique art. You don't want to use standard art that everybody else is going to use. You're allowed to use them in a game if you want. We just don't advise it. Also, be aware that these portraits are AI generated, so if that's an issue for you, do not include them in your game. Again, they're mostly provided for testing purposes, nothing more. And now, if we look inside the general folder, you will see that there's a folder for audio files, there's one for background files, there's one for other image files, and there's one for video files. We will talk about these folders and their contents later when we explain the background commands and the media commands. So I hope this gives you a general idea of Candy Dialog Engine's folder structure. And again, we will discuss these folders in more detail when we talk about features that are specific to these folders. Before we learn about Candy Dialog Creator and how to create dialogues, there is one more thing you need to know. Go to the Candy DE folder, and then to the scripts folder, and finally to the user data folder. And in the user data folder, there's this script here, candydatabase.gd. Let's take a look at it. Now, don't be surprised if this interface here doesn't look familiar. That's because I'm using VS Code. I'm not using the Godot built-in code editor. Now, as for the Candy database script, it's a script that contains all kinds of data that pertain to your game and which dialogues might use. For now, we're going to ignore the variables at the top, and we're going to scroll down here all the way to the actors dictionary, and you're going to be using this a lot. An actor in Candy Dialog Engine is any entity that plays a role inside dialogues. Typically, this would be characters. Most of the time, it would be characters who speak. But it could also be a simple object. For example, if you have a radio and you want to display the radio's broadcast as dialogue inside the dialog box or in a speech bubble, you could make the radio an actor and add it to the dictionary so that the dialogue engine has data about it. The actors dictionary contains several top-level keys. For example, you have player, Alice, John, and construction worker. Now, these keys are called actor references because their purpose is to help the dialogue engine refer to specific actors. And if you want to add more actors to your actors dictionary, all you need to do is simply add more top-level keys and make sure each of them has a unique name. And that's it. Every key here is an actor reference. Now, you can see here that, for example, the player key has a big number of sub-keys. Now, all these keys are optional, and they're used by the dialogue engine for specific purposes. One of the most important keys here is display name, and that would be how the actor's name should be displayed inside dialogues when they speak. So, for example, when the player speaks, you don't want to display player. So what you might do in your game is ask the player to type a name for their character, and when the player types a name, you update this key here to whatever the player wrote. For example, Barry. And after that, whenever the player speaks during dialogues, it's going to show their name as Mary instead of player. If display name is empty, this is going to be displayed by default, player. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the keys here at this time. We're going to talk about them later when they become relevant. But yeah, keep in mind display name, it's pretty important. I think most games would make use of that one. And you don't need to copy all of them. If you're not using them, you don't need them. For example, those ones here are specifically for visual novel features, so if your game is not a visual novel and doesn't use those features, you don't need those keys. So you can see here, John, for example, has only 2 keys, and that's perfectly fine. It's not going to cause any problems, it's not going to make the game crash, and it makes your actors dictionary a lot shorter and a lot more easier to work with. And one more thing I want to mention quickly. Remember the media folder that I explained earlier? If you go back to CandyDE media and then characters, and for example portraits, you have a folder for each actor's portraits. The names have to match the actor references. For example, when Alice speaks a dialogue line, you're going to write Alice exactly like her actor reference here. And you might assign a portrait to Alice's line. And the dialogue engine is going to look into Alice's folder, so the name of the folder has to be a match to the actor reference. And notice here we have construction worker, and it's written exactly like the actor reference here. Alright, so that's just one small detail you're going to have to remember. Okay, now we can move on and discover Candy Dialog Creator. So let's go back to our download folder, and as a reminder, you need to download the Candy Dialog Creator. I assume you did it. The link to the GitHub is in the video's description if you need it. And remember, you need to download the compiled version of Candy Dialog Creator. Don't download the source code because that will give you an uncompiled Godot project. And the uncompiled Godot project, it's just in case you want to look at the code or modify it and compile your own. But for this demonstration here, you want a compiled version. And make sure it matches your operating system. So if you're using Linux like I am, you would download Linux. If you're using Windows, make sure you download Windows, and so on. Okay, So remember, you have to extract the downloaded file, and then you get this folder here. Go here, and you're gonna find an executable. So I'm going to open it. You just need to double click it. And now the Candy dialog creator is going to launch. Now, the first thing you need to do here is create a user profile. I already had one for testing, but you won't have one. This is going to be empty. So click the plus button here and just type a name for your profile. And this should be your own personal profile. If other people are using the same computer and also using Candy Dialog Creator, everybody should have their own user profile. So go ahead, type a name, click confirm, and there you go. Now we have a new profile here. Okay, and now, well, that's a new user, not a new profile. And now what we need to do is create a new project profile. So you would click this button here, new profile, and give it a name that matches your project. I'm gonna call it Candy DE Demo because I'm using it for this demonstration. And there you go. Now you have a new profile. So each Godot project can have its own profile, and in fact this is highly recommended, and you will see why in a moment. Okay, so make sure to click the profile to select it. It's not going to automatically select by default when you create it. So click here, and then click the green button here, select profile. And here we are. This is the new Candy Dialog Creator 1.1 user interface. The first thing you need to do, and this is very important, go up here. You have this button with a gear, that's the settings menu. Click on it, and this window here is going to appear. Now by default it's going to open inside the preferences tab. We can talk about this later. It's not very important right now. These are just essentially various settings for the Candy Dialog Creator. Go here to the Project Paths tab. And here at the top where it says Project Path, you need to provide a path to your Godot project. Now to provide a path to your project, the easiest way is just to go here, click the button with the three dots, and a file dialog is going to open, and you can navigate to your Godot project. Now, just to be clear, you need to navigate to your project root folder. Don't navigate to Candy DE. Okay, make sure it's the project root. So if you see this, you see the Candy DE folder, you're in the right place. So just click select, and there you go. Now the path will be added here. Now just one more thing, we don't have to worry about these paths here. They're not important right now. It's just in case you're not using the recommended default folder structure for Candy Dialog Engine. For example, if your dialogs folder is not inside the Candy DE folder, you could update the path to point to wherever your dialog folder is. Okay, but again, if you're using the Candy DE default folder structure and you haven't changed anything, then these paths are all correct by default and you don't have to touch them. So now let's go to the Project Data tab. The Project Data tab is used for importing data from some of your project's scripts. Because Candy Dialog Creator can use some of that data. For example, here we have actors. We have the actors section. And here in the script field, we have the path to the Candy database script from earlier. And we have the name of the actors dictionary. So this is telling Candy Dialog Creator where the actor's dictionary is in your project. And now if you click the Import Data button, it's going to import the actor references from your actor's dictionary. Let's take a look. See here, player, Alice, John, construction worker, and the same here, player, Alice, John, construction worker. And the reason it does that is because when you write a spoken line or other kinds of lines, Candy Dialog Creator can provide a list of the various actor references in your project so that you can quickly select an actor reference instead of typing it by hand. Notice you can add your own actor references here if you need to. For example, if they're missing from the actor's dictionary. So I can add Mary, and if I import data, it's not going to erase Mary. Now let's take a look. I'm gonna delete John and construction worker, and I'm gonna keep Mary. And if I import again, see, it re-imports John and construction worker, and it keeps Mary. So yeah, you can add more references here if they're not inside the actor's dictionary. Just make sure you separate them with a comma. Also, it might happen that your actor's dictionary could have a lot of actor references. You might have a ton of secondary NPCs that don't have a lot of dialogue. Depending on your game, you could have hundreds of actor references. And if you have 100 actor references, that's going to be a very long list to browse through just to find the actor reference you want inside Candy Dialog Creator when you write a dialogue. So there's a solution to this. There's a very simple solution. Here, at the top of the script, we have those arrays. And look at this one, Creator Actor List. I'm just going to copy it. And let me just add a couple references. Okay, I'm just gonna add Alice and John. Right, and now I'm gonna go back to Candy Dialog Creator. I'm gonna delete this, and I'm gonna change the variable from the actor's dictionary to the Creator Actor List. And now if I import data, it's importing the data from the Creator Actor List, so I have a lot less references. Okay, so that's one option. That's another option to make your work easier. Now, I'm just going to return it to the Actor's Dictionary. Next, we have the roles here. I didn't talk about roles. They're also located in the Candy database. We're going to discuss this later, but I'm going to import them already. There's a default role called Civilian. I will explain what roles are later. Next, we have flags, and this is basically progression flags. If you don't know what progression flags are, they're basically a standard thing in video games. They're just variables that tell a game what happened and what needs to happen next. I'm not going to explain this right now, it would be a bit long. But if you know what a progression flag is in a video game, then yeah, in the Candy database script, there's a dictionary for flags, for progression flags. And again, you can import data from it, because sometimes a few dialog commands can modify flags, so it's helpful if you have a list of all the flags. And finally, we have dispositions. I'm not going to explain what dispositions do right now. We'll talk about it later. The one thing to know, Candy Dialog Engine doesn't need a list of all the dispositions. It doesn't care. Candy Dialog Engine only cares about which disposition an actor currently has. It doesn't care what all the possible dispositions are. So there's no disposition dictionary inside Candy database. But in Candy Dialog Creator, it's convenient if you have a list of all the possible dispositions in your game. So again, you can go here to the creator disposition list, and this one is not there by default. I added it earlier. So by default, the creator disposition list has these two dispositions, like and dislike. And again, Candy Dialog Engine does not use this at all. But this allows Candy Dialog Creator to import the dispositions. So let's click import, and oh yeah, I didn't save, that's why it imported friend. So let's click import, and there you go. It imported like and dislike. Okay. So yeah. Now, before we finish up, one thing to know is that whenever you update your those dictionaries or arrays, you need to come back here and manually import. It doesn't do it automatically. Okay, so yeah, just remember, if you add data in here, it won't appear in the Candy Dialog Creator until you import. Don't be surprised if it doesn't show up in the list. That's probably why. Alright, so just to summarize quickly, all you need to do here, provide the path to your Godot project root folder. That's it. And then go to the project data tab, and here basically just click import. You don't have to modify anything. And now you can close the menu